It's time for Inside the Patch with your Las Vegas Raiders. Here's Gnarley Charley.
Welcome back to Inside the Patch, 1430 ESPN, your Valley Sports leader. So, I've had Kenny King on the show. I've had Bill Romanowski. Well, this is the legendary Mitch Adams. And what Mitch means to me is I met him when I was a season ticket holder to the Raiders, and he put on the Legend Show at halftime at the Coliseum. So it's been like 20 years you and I have known each other.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Mitch. I want to brag about you a little bit more, too. Mitch, first off, he knows all the old players know Mitch. If I stole his phone, there is at least 3 Super Bowl rings in that thing, and a lot of people, he's got everyone's number. I'm sure he probably talks to Al Davis still. I just know Mitch knows the Raiders, and they know him. And when you put your Legends show together, it was awesome. But on a side note, he also is an inventor, and it's called the Perfect Rotation. Show the card real quick. Look at this. It's basketball. It's a new training tool for basketball. Look at that thing. And so
it's weighted and has patented channels on it.
Yeah.
Finger placement. So you get a perfect rotation on your shot.
You know, and maybe you should invent a football now. And because the one that they can perfectly catch too.
Yeah. The perfect hands. Yeah.
Well, I'm bringing you. Well, another funny story about Mitch is I've always just thought he was cool. And one day I saw him, it was away from the Coliseum, and I'm talking to him, and he's acting like he doesn't know me. And I'm like, Mitch, it's me, Gnarly. He's got a twin brother. The exact replica. Did not know that. And I thought Mitch was big time in me. And no, it was his brother. And so, but back in the Oakland days, man, you had it going on. How did you get to be at the Legend Show? How did all that come to happen?
Wow. Well, I knocked on the door of the Raiders. In fact, I wrote a letter to Al Davis. And because I remember I used to write letters hoping to get a job there. And a friend said, why don't you just write Al Davis? And she said, what do you have to lose? Well, you'll be no worse off than you are today. So I wrote a letter, and I got a phone call back.
No way.
And it says, we need you to sit down with Morris Bradshaw. I said, okay, I could do that.
Morris played wide receiver for the Raiders for many years.
Out of Ohio State. And in fact, I was just with him Saturday for his 70th birthday. Happy birthday, Mo.
Nice.
And he called me and says, hey, I got this letter here that you want to work for the team. And I said, well, I'm in the midst of beginning a master's program at USF, their sports management program. And he said, well, that doesn't start until January. It's September. I said, I'm trying to get a head start on all the competition. And he said, well, come and see me. And I did. And he says, I have nothing for you this year. And this was September of 99. And he says, but after the draft, I want you to stay in touch with me, but call me after the draft and I'll bring you in. And sure enough, he brought me in interning there in the sales and marketing department. And they had a show that nobody wanted to run called The Legend Show. And a small correction, it was pregame and halftime to begin with. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, what do I do? They said, well, we'll need all the former players. And I'm like, all the guys I grew up watching.
Oh, yeah.
So they give me a book with all of the players' information.
Wow.
And it said, call them, see who's available. And this internship turned it to just, me coming back for 16 seasons doing it.
Wow.
And me making lifelong friends of guys that I idolized growing up. It was just magical.
That's so good. And, I saw everyone from Daryl LaMonica to Tim Brown. You had guests on there. And it was and you say it's a halftime show, but it's in the club level. And there was probably like 500 people sitting around watching this thing happen.
Yeah.
And I know I asked a question to Daryl LaMonica one time, and I was like, no one was asking questions. So I stepped up and I said, hey, Daryl, you went to school with my mom in high school, Clovis High, and you signed her yearbook. And I go, are you my father? And everyone started laughing.
I remember that.
And then I go, and George Atkinson was up there, and I go, okay, yep. George Atkinson, same question. And it was just funny. but it was just kind of cool to have that interaction with him. And I was so impressed. And I'm sorry that I had you come on the show the week after this horrible New Orleans, whatever voodoo showdown thing we had. But is there what's your glimmer of hope? What kind of thing can we offer? I already talked to someone about, we think it's Taco Bell's fault for being in Davante Adams' house. That's a big part of it. But maybe there's something else. Is there a glimmer of hope? What do you got?
The first 5 weeks of the season, excluding the bye, the Raiders were in every game. I mean, They lost a total of 4 games by 14 points. Lost to Kansas City by 1 point. Holding on the defense on a field goal.
Never heard of it.
What? Of course, it happens to us. Right. But they were in all these games. The Tennessee game, they started a little slow, but they came back. And so I saw what I thought I would see from this team, a collection of talent on offense. And I thought Chandler Jones on defense, coupled with Crosby on the other side, would be a formidable pass rush that would allow the defensive backs to really stay in their coverage and not – I just thought we had a recipe for a decent maybe 10, 11 win season this year.
Yep. And,
we did well last year and we came on at the end, and that game against the Chargers felt like a playoff game. And then we don't do so well in the playoffs. In fact, actually, we didn't do too poorly. We had that bad call in Cincinnati with the whistle blowing. Everybody,
it was down to one possession,
Yeah. So I just thought we would build upon that and, bring a Davante Adams over and he and Derek having the relationship that they have. I thought that we would see something. You couple Adams and Waller and Renfro, and then Josh Jacobs been running like a madman. In fact, before the game Sunday, I think in the fantasy, I forgot what I heard, but he was like the number 1 offensive player in the league.
Yep.
So I do think what we saw Sunday was an anomaly because they could do nothing right. Nothing at all. I mean, they didn't cross the 50-yard line until the last drive of the game, and that was with the backup quarterback.
I'll be honest with you. I thought Brett Favre's dad died again because, I remember when that happened, he destroyed the Raiders, and I was like, what is going on here? And so my takeaway from all this is that, you know what? This is the kind of – they got to just put it together. They're not mathematically out.
No.
It doesn't look good. Doesn't look good, but let's see what they're made of. We're going to see right now.
When you look around the league, there are a lot of teams bunched at 3 and 4 wins.
Yeah.
And then you have a couple, Philadelphia, even though that's NFC, 6-0 or 7-0, and then Kansas City with 1 loss. You got some guys that are really out there, Buffalo, but everyone else is still there, catchable. And I hope and pray that this week away from Las Vegas, and not that Las Vegas is the problem, but that they get a chance to spend together on the road in Florida before they head up to Jacksonville, that they get some camaraderie going, almost like a training camp again, and they come out with a renewed spirit, because that was embarrassing. I don't know that I've been a part of a loss that embarrassing.
Yeah.
Even through the lean years, after the Gannon days, through Jamarcus Russell and Campbell and whoever else came in the quarterback up until Carr, they were lean years, but we stuck with it. And I don't recall a loss being that embarrassing as what we experienced Sunday.
Well, this is, I believe that they have the talent there. And if we could just transport that team that played Kansas City, if we can have those guys every week, we win every game from now on. So it's not over, and it's never over. As a Raider fan, that's when I met you, through some of the lean years, and we were still there, and we still signed up, and it's still in our heart. It's like at some point a team gets pressed into your heart, and you can't take it out. And so I'm going to root for them no matter what. But no matter what, man, it's the weird part is I talk to a lot of kids. Now, some of them are 25, 30 now, and ask them, they say like the Dolphins, they like Pittsburgh. And I go, why? And they all have that same answer. Between a 7 and 11 at their age, that team was good or they rooted for whatever reason. Could be a dad, could be an uncle, could be he liked the uniforms. But that somehow gets impressed into your chest, and then it's the deal. And you're that.
And that's me with the Raiders. I remember as a little boy, my dad cursing at the TV, and I was just drawn to whatever that was that had him go from here to here and
right
back to here, because inevitably back in those days we were winning games, and lots of games in the 70s, and all of a sudden I'm a fan. And I remember Phil Villapiano and Otis Sistrunk come to my school through an AC Transit bus program that they had here in Oakland. They visited various schools. And I remember they walked in. I remember looking up and said, oh, man, these guys must be football players, because they were huge to me.
Right.
And sure enough, there's Villapiano and there's Sistrunk. And then a few years later, I get to meet Otis. But then the magical part is that I come into the Raider fold, and I'm working with Phil and Otis and share those stories of my youth, of seeing them, and that Otis gave me an autographed football in 1975. And
that's awesome.
And then all of a sudden, I'm out. Otis comes to town. Hey, Mitch, what are you doing? Come down to the Hilton. And Phil, I'm in Atlanta one year, and Phil had a suite, and the Raiders, unfortunately, were beaten that day as well. And Phil had said, come visit the suite. So I took a friend with me, and I walk in. He says, everybody, Mitch Adams, Al Davis's right-hand man. And I'm like, what? And
you just smile.
And everybody comes up and shakes my hand. And John Bella was in there. And John and I go back a long way, because we did some other programs together at USC. And he said, just let Phil be Phil. So we're in the suite, and the game is over. And if you've ever been in a suite, whatever alcohol you don't use, it goes back to the stadium.
Uh-huh.
And so everyone was leaving, and Phil put his hands up. And I don't know if you can curse on this show, so I won't.
Yeah, you can. Okay, but no.
Sit your effing A's down. Nobody leaves until all this is gone.
We don't.
So an hour later, hand to God, an hour later, security's checking doors, and they open this one, and it's full
of people. They're like, what?
Like, what are you doing? And Phil says, get in here and drink these last 2 beers so we can go home. And then they escort us through the stadium, down onto the field, and out the tunnel, because everything else was
everything's closed up. Mitch, that is hilarious. Hey, real quick, Mitch, if they wanted to get a hold of your basketball, is there a place that they can reach it? Is there a website? Is there a Facebook page? What do you got?
All of that. PerfectRotation.com.
PerfectRotation.com.
Let's see. It's right there. PerfectRotation.com. Also, there's a number, 415-797-7163, 2 size balls, 2.5 pounds and 4 pounds.
This is for coaches and players. It's a practice ball that helps them. It forces them to have perfect rotation, right?
Exactly. It's weighted, and so you can't do the old chicken wing shot. It forces your elbow down because it's weighted, and you have to come straight up under it and then release.
Boom.
And then you get your fingertips into the release process.
Well, hey, Mitch, I appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you on again, too. Mitch Adams, ladies and gentlemen, good friend of mine. Thank you, Mitch, for being on the show. And I'll tell you more about perfect rotation. If you want more information on that, I'll have it here on my blog. So thanks, brother.
Thanks, Gnarley. And go Raiders. We're going to win this week. Jacksonville going down.
Woo!
We'll be back with more Inside the Patch on 1430 ESPN, your official home of the Las Vegas Raiders.